So another concept within pivot tables is grouping date fields. And I find in a pivot table or pivot chart, ultimately, you want to make sure that the information is readable in that chart. And sometimes summarizing by day of week or month or year is a great way to do that summary. And I find to do that, grouping is the way to do it in a pivot table, and you can right-click on any date field, let's say in this case, and group on that date field, and do it by day, month, year, etc. Another thing that you can do is also use the pivot table tools option above, where also you can see the group field is also highlighted, and an ability to select that. So going back into Excel, into this sample data file, we have a Dates tab, and just to make this simple, is we wanted to just take a look at a completed pivot table, which is done here. We have the invoice date field, we have a sum of, but actually, to make it a little more complex on the right here, we've added a variety of different field types that you can get. And again, we've gone through this, but this is the value field settings. You're able to change if you wanted to go to a count or a sum or a min or a max. And again, this can be quite interesting to look at. But for our graphing purposes and what we're putting into the date chart, I'd like to, instead of looking at a date chart that looks like that, which it may be a little hard to recognize and read, what I'd rather do is group that information. So let me take select the invoice date field, and by right-clicking it, I can select group. And I have the option of selecting year and month in this case, or maybe year, quarter, month, and that will provide me with that type of analysis. So let's go back to the chart, and again, just looking at the below, it makes it very readable from a year, quarter, and month perspective. So any chart that you have, I mean, or any data table that you have that you want to look at in more of a date formatted way, I do suggest this year, quarter, month formatting. Now, you may want to change what you have within the actual bars themselves. So, for example, let's go back to this date field here. One of the things that you might want to do, instead of having year, quarter, invoice date, you may want to get rid of some of the max and min fields. I'm just looking down here, the possibly even the count field, and really just have the amount field here. But regardless, if you have all of them or just one or two, it might be a little easier with one or two to read it. But regardless, you still can very quickly identify pockets of time, in this case April, May, where there is quite a bit of activity. One last thing to take a look at is the day of week function. In this case, it's actually the weekday, the way it's stated in Excel, and we're just going to click on that function button. What it's going to do, it's going to return the number from 1 to 7, identifying the day of the week. 2 through 6 are the weekdays, and 1 and 7 are the weekends. So again, E2 in this case was the check date. We could do a day of week check date. We could have another field for day of week enter date, another one for invoice date too, if we'd like. Going over to the dates area, I'm going to take out a couple of the time frames that we had in here, and to that I'm going to put the day of week function, and I'm going to bring that into the row area. And by doing so, we see that we have a lot of weekday activity, which is then summed, counted, and maxed. And again, this is a very common test to take a look at weekend activity that might be more fraudulent or just odd why it's happening. A lot of system processing happens during that time, so general ledger processing, etc., will be done over a weekend. Same thing in accounts payable for general ledger processing a lot of times. So it is not uncommon. It can happen, yet it is something to take a look at.